how to deploy this sample Spring Boot microservice to OpenShift using the developer sandbox. So I think the first thing here is you want to go and look at this URL here, and I've got instructions down here on what to do. So of course, one of the things you're going to need is an account on Red Hat, an account that you can then use your developer sandbox against. So if you follow this link here, you go there. It will give you some instructions on how to use this, and you can click here and go ahead and get started. So that's the first step. And the next thing you want to do is make sure you clone down this repo and build your code using Maven. So I've already got this repo down over here. Let's clone down. Let's do a Maven npm clean install. It's going to take a second, and it's going to go through and compile the code, run the tests, everything it needs to do to run here. And it's got the it's going to run the unit tests and Jacoco plugin. And at the end of it, it's going to create a target folder with our Spring Boot fat jar that we can then use in our Docker container. So just real quick, the Docker container right now, it's very simple. I'm using an OpenJDK8 universal base image from Red Hat, and I'm copying the jar, calling it app jar, into the new container. And I'm starting it. I got to also make sure I set my XMX so I can limit the amount of memory that the container is allowed to use. So this is just a quick example. And now that I've got my code built, I want to start deploying stuff in here. So if I go into the sandbox now, I've already logged in, so I can just kind of go right here. You can see that I've got a couple sample apps, but most of my my apps aren't I don't have it deployed here. So this app I don't have deployed here. The next thing you want to do is come up here to your profile, copy your login command, and it's going to have you log in again. And you can come over here, get the display token, and copy that token, the login token, and then paste that in here. To go ahead and log in. And did it hit enter? No, I didn't. There we go. And so it went ahead and connected me to my default, my dev namespace, and that's where I want to be. So if I needed to change it, I could do an OC project and switch over. So next thing I want to do is I got an application YAML that I keep outside of my source main resources. The reason being, I don't like to have it compiled into the jar. I want it where I can load it into a config map, because you want to pull a lot of your stuff from the environment. Your secrets and your configuration, all that should be coming from the environment and not included into your jar. And so that's why I keep it out separate. Here it allows me to develop, and the compiler will find it here if it's local, if it's on the root of the application when I'm running locally. But when I build, it's not going to get included with the jar, and I'll tell it to use a different one. So let me go show how I'm going to tell it to use this application configuration. So here I've got a build template and a deployment template I'm going to use later. And so just real quick here, I also am, even though I switched this application to use an H2 in-memory database just to make it easier, anybody wants to follow this, I went ahead and showed how to pull secrets and have them load as environment variables. So there'll be an environment variable inside of the container called MySQL username that will have looked inside of the MySQL credentials for a key called username and loaded that with the value. The same thing for the password. Here's where loading the application YAML, here's how we can do that. I can call this application config here, this volume. I'm going to mount that volume into the container on a path called config. And then I'm going to tell Spring to look in the config application YAML folder or a config directory for that application YAML. So it'll know this environment variable here tells it where to find the configuration. I don't really need this one. It's just kind of, I might take that one out. But in future templates, but that's just an example here of that. Let me, there's a lot to look at in this thing. So first thing we want to do, let's make that config map out of that application YAML now that we've logged in. So I'm just going to grab this command right here, and it's going to create a config map. And let's go ahead and run it. And did I hit the enter button? No, I didn't. There we go. And it should come back in just a second. Yep, so it created it. So I can come back over here and I can go to my config maps, and I can see my Spring Boot items API right here, and that's kind of what it looks like. The actual YAML is more like this. It has a data section, and then the name of the file and all the contents. So that's the first step. Next thing I want to do is, if I wanted to use a secret, what happened there? If I wanted to use a secret here, I'm going to, which I am in my template, so I kind of need to have it. I can have this, I can use the OC command to create my secret. So this is probably a one-time thing. You wouldn't really necessarily want this in a build pipeline for loading up the application YAML or the secret. But there we go. It should be created. You can turn around and see that here. There should be a Spring Boot. Oh no, MySQL credentials. That's what I just created. And you can, I didn't put anything secret in there really. So this will, that's how you get a secret created. And so the next thing I want to do is I want to create a build configuration. So that's going to come over here and under builds, you'll see build configs. And I've got one that I made for something else, but let's go ahead and create one now by pasting this in. It's going to use the build YAML, and I'm using the OC new app command to apply a template. And this param here is things that, if I'm just putting in an example, if I wanted to override this generic template with custom values. And so it went ahead and deployed the template. And so I should be able to see it now. Yeah, there it is. And that's my template. But it won't have, well, it did trigger a build, I guess, but it didn't, that's not how I currently want to have it run. So what I'm gonna do next is I'm gonna manually trigger it and upload my locally built jar file. And actually I'm uploading the whole directory. But I could refine this if I edited my Docker file to just upload the jar if I wanted. So I'm going to upload that and kick off a build. It needs to be, oh, there's a missing part of it here. OC start build. And this is going to create the build and deploy it into the OpenShift cluster, or the container registry. That's integrated container registry inside of OpenShift. Now you can use an external container registry if you want. You just need to configure that. But we're using the integrated one that's built into the free. You can, I don't have to do anything. It's here with that snapshot, that sandbox. So it ended up building, and it ended up started. It uploaded the template and started the build. So I should be able to. It ended up switching windows here on me. Give me a second. There we go. So if I go back to my builds here, I should see, here we go. Now I've got one running. And I can go in and look at the logs here and see it starting to work here. And running my Docker file. This is the template uses a Docker build strategy. You can use several other types of strategies, but this is the one I chose just for this because it's very simple. So it ended up succeeding in pushing the image to the registry. And so the next thing I want to do, I've got the image built. I want to trigger a deployment of the image. So the way I would do that here is I can do an OC process right here. And in this case here, I'm like I said, I'm I'm overwriting the param value here. And then, so this one's going to take, it's going to take that template and make a JSON file out of it, and then we're going to apply that into OpenShift. Because right now, before running this, I don't have a deployment configuration for the Spring Boot application. So let's go ahead and do that. Oh, I hit enter on the wrong screen. Here we go. And so it's applied the, actually this actually has routes and services in it too. You might choose to separate that out to a different document, but I have it all together in one right now. And with this deployed, it should trigger a deployment. Let me see here. Yeah, it looks like it is here. So the first one that we had didn't work right because it didn't have any source with it. The second one here, it is working on it right now. So it's in the process. Oh, that's the build. I want the deployment. Oh, this is a first deployed, so it's right here. So this container is just used for the deployment job, and we can come over. It shows that it's scaling it up, and any events that occurred, where it's pulling the container and all that. The actual running pod is right here. So I can come into here and look at my logs, and I can see my Spring Boot logs here, and that the application has started. Now, it may not be available yet. I think I have a 60-second in my health check before it's available. So let's go actually to our networking routes, and yeah, for my readiness or liveness probe. Sorry, readiness probe to make sure that it's working. So we're going to go and actually try to go through this route. And so I don't really have anything at the root of the application. I do have a Swagger UI here that you can turn around and do things with the application. Say I wanted to post it, show that, hey, there's nothing there to begin with. Let me get all the items and try it out. Execute. And nothing there, so I can turn around and I can post one in. Just show that real quick while I'm here. Try it out. I don't want that ID on there, so I'll take that out. And just execute. And so I have it returning as submitted once it's submitted, but I can turn around and get the get my value, and it's there. It's using Spring Data pagination with this, so you get a pageable object. That's pretty much all I wanted to show. It's here running, and it's available. I can turn around and I can switch views to the developer view and see it over here as well. And I've got one instance of it. With this, it's going to end up scaling down my application here after being up for, I don't know, 8 hours or so. But it's a good little place to play around and test your deployment configs and test that you really can your application's going to work okay. That's all I have. Thank you very much.